Hello everybody, and welcome back to Certified Collectibles. This is another installment in our must-haves video series. This series focuses on pop culture related collectibles that we believe have long-term investment potential. Now for today, we picked out 5 CGC certified comics, all from the 80s and 90s. All these are scarce on the market and very overlooked by collectors. These are going to be slightly undervalued in today's market. They are starting to pick up a little steam, but I think there's still some time for you guys to get in. All these have great potential going forward. So we do have 5 to show you guys today. Let's go ahead and get started with our first book. We're going to present these in chronological order, the way they were released to the public. So let's take a look. Real Ghostbusters #1, published by Now Comics in August of 1988. This is a CGC 9.6. In today's market, this is going to cost you about $500 or less. In 9.8, probably cost you $500 or more. Now, this is the first appearance of the Ghostbusters in a U.S. comic. The first appearance of Ghostbusters in comics overall was in March of 1988, published by Marvel UK over in the UK. This is the first US appearance of the Ghostbusters in a comic book. Now in CGC 9.6, there's only 17 of these, and in 9.8, there's only 14. There's only 87 total across all grades in the CGC census. Now, you know, the Ghostbusters comic like this, it's very similar to all the cartoon comics from the 80s and 90s. These were meant for a young audience, so these books were not kept nice. That's why this book is creeping up in price and why you should expect to pay $500 or more in 9.6 and 9.8, because kids are not going to keep these books nice. They're going to read them, throw them away, tear them up, color in them, or whatever. You know, all these cartoon comics from the 80s and 90s were not meant to be kept nice, and they weren't. So that's why these prices are creeping up for a lot of these 80s and 90s cartoon comics. There's just not a lot of them out there. You know, and if there's 17 and 9.6 and 14 and 9.8, you can expect this book, you're not going to see boxes of mint condition books coming out. Maybe this population will pick up maybe 10 or 20 books over the next decade, but this is going to be a low pop book in high grade. This is one we do think has great potential. The Ghostbusters franchise is still going strong. They're still making movies. They're still producing merchandise. So this one here we think is a great pickup for your collection. Real Ghostbusters #1. Okay, next up. Here we have 8-Ball #1, published by Fantagraphic Books, August 1989. This is CGC 9.6. Today's market, expect to pay $600 to $700 for this book. In 9.6 and 9.8, expect to pay closer to $1,000. Now, this is an independent title created by Daniel Clowes. This is one of the best-selling alternate comic series of all time and currently ranked at number 15 on Overstreet's Top 25 Copper Age Comics list. Now, in 9.6, there's only 11 of these. 9.8, there's only 5. And there's only 55 total across all grades. You're talking about a very, very scarce book in any grade. Very scarce in high grade. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the list that Overstreet puts out, the top 25 list for Silver Age, Copper Age, Bronze Age, Golden Age books. But when books make that list, collectors go after them, put them in their collection, then you never see them again. If this is sitting on as book number 15, on the top 25 Copper Age books, you can expect these to be absorbed whenever they hit the market. So this is one, a lot of price drivers behind this. The fact that it's on Overstreet's list, the fact that there's so few across all grades, there's so few at high grade, and this is an alternative title. You know, these weren't heavily collected like these superhero titles. So this one here, there's not going to be a lot of them out there. Once again, just like we mentioned with the Ghostbusters, these are not going to pop up in population to a great degree. Maybe over the next decade or two, you might see a few more pop up in high grade, but you're not going to have hundreds of them come to market. This one here, super, super good pickup for your collection. All right, let's take a look at book number 3. Here we have Batman The Long Halloween #1, published by DC Comics in October 1996. This is CGC 9.8. Expect to pay about $500 in today's market for this. 9.8, there's 218 of these, none higher, 538 across all grades. This is the first appearance of Alberto Falcone, and Batman The Long Halloween is considered one of the definitive Batman stories to date. This is incredibly popular with collectors, and they did make a feature film last year in 2021, released in 2 parts in June and July, that did kick up interest in this particular title. So this one here isn't as undervalued as it was a few years ago. With 218 of these on the census in 9.8, this is definitely going to be easier to pick up at a affordable price in today's market. But like I said, this is creeping up. Expect to pay about $500 today. If you had bought this 2 or 3 years ago, you could have picked this up for $150 or so. This is creeping up though, especially after that animated film drew a little bit more interest. And DC has republished or rebooted this franchise, so they have released the, let's say, volume 2 of this. So people are going back and picking up this first one, and this is going to get absorbed. So there aren't going to be a lot of these on the market. Like I said, 218 isn't going to be a lot if 2,000 people want it. So this one here definitely has some promise, definitely has some forward potential. This is one we think you should pick up and add to your collection sooner rather than later. Like we say, we do expect the price on this to keep going up. All right, only 2 books left. Here we have Elseworlds 80-page giant number 1, published by DC Comics, August 1999. This is CGC 9.8. Expect to pay $1,000 or more for this in 9.8. In 9.8, there's only 30. There's only 1 higher in CGC 10, 193 across all grades. Now this one here is a one-shot that was recalled by DC Comics once it hit retailers. There's only believed to be about 700 to 2,000 of these out in the wild that retailers didn't send back to be destroyed by DC Comics. Not a lot of these out there, 700 to 2,000 books in general. Now this was recalled because there was a story in here that DC deemed inappropriate after they've already shipped them to retailers. It was called Letitia Lerner, Superman's Babysitter, where a super baby finds its way into a microwave. This was obviously recalled by DC Comics at the time of publication. They deemed this as inappropriate, like I mentioned. But this story went on to actually win 2 Eisner Awards and was republished in Bizarro Comics. So the story did get out into the public, but when this was actually first printed, DC pulled it, but it was re-released later on and did win some Eisner Awards. But this is the recalled edition. This here is very, very scarce, with only 700 to 2,000 believed to exist out there anywhere in the world. To get a 9.8 in this, very, very tough. This is not going to be a book that you see shoot up by hundreds in 9.8. Maybe it goes up to 40 or 50 over the next decade or two. But don't expect to see a lot of these in high grade. Don't expect to see a lot of these at all. You know, like I said, 700 to 2,000 books isn't a lot out there. If 5,000 or 6,000 people want this book, this one here, incredible potential going forward. In today's market, like I said, you could pick this up probably for $1,000 for 9.8. Don't expect it to stay there though. Get this one here sooner rather than later if you want to add this one to your collection. That's a great, great book to have in your collection. Our last book of the day. Here we have Cartoon Network starring Powerpuff Girls number 1. Released by DC Comics in September 1999. This is CGC 9.8. Expect to pay $750 or more for this book in 9.8. In 9.8, there's only 6, none higher. Only 38 total across all grades. Now, this is the first team appearance of the Powerpuff Girls in a standard comic. But what's driving the price of this here is the scarcity. You know, in 9.8, there's only a handful of these. You know, don't expect these, like we mentioned with the Real Ghostbusters earlier on. These are children's comics. These are meant for a young audience. These are not going to be kept nice. They're not going to be stored. Collectors are not going to pick them up off the racks usually. These are meant for children. Children are going to buy these. Children are going to read these. They're going to be thrown around, colored on, destroyed, ripped up. These do not exist out there in abundance in high grade. Now, the CW is making a live-action TV series for Powerpuff Girls. It was supposed to come out in 2021, but they're rebooting it, retooling it. It's actually supposed to come out later this year. We expect that to drive some interest in this title, but what's actually driving the price of this isn't the live-action TV series, it is the scarcity. With only 6 and 9.8, and the fact that, you know, like I said, this is a children's book, and it was geared towards young girls. This is not going to be one you find hundreds of these in 9.8 years down the road. This is going to be super, super scarce on the market, and people are going after these cartoon comics from the 80s and 90s. This is definitely one to pick up for your collection. So there you have the 5 books that we chose for you guys today. Please feel free to drop some comments in the comment section below. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. And as always, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thank you for joining us here at Certified Collectibles, and we'll see you again next time.